Hi, welcome, welcome.
Welcome, welcome. It's so great to have you here. Hi, Stephanie, my lovely co host and partner in crime.
Oh my goodness. Hello, Laura. I'm so excited for our first episode.
So, we just wanted to introduce ourselves first for any of you who don't know who we are. Would you like to start?
Sure.
Okay.
My name is Stephanie Campos. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am an astrologer, witch, cat lover. I've been studying the metaphysical arts for over a decade. So everything from energy work to EFT tapping to curanderismo and much more. And yeah, I'm so excited to have a dedicated television show to magic, witchcraft, astrology, and more. And to be alongside the lovely Laura.
Share your big three.
Okay, well, clearly I'm a Leo. I love a little glitter. I'm a Leo rising and I'm a Virgo moon.
Perfect. Hi, my name is Laura Chung. My pronouns are she, hers, and hers, her and hers. My sun is in Aries. I'm an Aquarius Moon, Sagittarius rising. So this is my season. Hello.
Yes.
I have my master's in industrial and organizational psychology. It's really about what motivates people and what makes great leaders, which will come in handy as we talk about Mr. Musk later on in the show. And I really got into healing about 2017 when I quit my corporate job. I did have a 9 to 5 regular job before this. And as a true Sagittarian, I was traveling and meeting all sorts of people. And that's when I really got into healing and learning about different modalities of healing to help heal myself and past trauma. And I don't know, as any healer comes into this field of healing oneself, you want to share and help others. And I really started studying astrology more seriously during this time. And yeah, now I am coming out of the closet and saying that I'm a witch. And um, I'm so excited to be here with you, Stephanie, because we really just had this idea a couple months ago, and to have it come to life is like so fun, so amazing.
I I could not be more excited and feel the same way. So, we've got so much to cover today. We are going to be talking about the archetype of the witch. We're going to be talking about Elon and Twitter. Today is a juicy and potent new moon in Sagittarius, and there's a lot you can do with that energy. So, we'll touch on that too, but we've got a really great show lined up for everyone.
Yes, and it is a new moon in Sagittarius at the time of this filming. It's actually in 3 minutes. So we wanted to actually do a ritual and guide you through this very easy process of how we use astrology and the energies available to us to set a new intention and really create magic. Because it is a dark moon, we set the intention, we envision, and we do whatever we can in doing our part, but then we leave it up to the universe and surrender to how it comes in. So you don't have to have anything with you, but if you do happen to have a candle, you can light it, because this is a mutable fire sign, Sagittarius. And as double fire signs ourselves, this is our
Yes.
element.
We had to have some candles.
Yes. So go ahead and light your candle now. And this is also, using a little bit of electional astrology. And in one of our episodes and shows, we're going to actually teach you how to use electional astrology to like launch your business. Stephanie and I used electional charts for the witching hour. So it's
Yeah, and for those who haven't used electional astrology before, it's essentially the timing of starting something. So using auspicious times in the stars to align with your intentions and actions. So it can really just kickstart and add even more magic and power to your intention if you, do it with the right alignment.
Yeah. And with that being said, we're 2 minutes out. So if you want to just place your candle to the side, and I invite you to close your eyes. And we're just going to do a simple grounding practice. So just with your spine straight, sit up tall, feeling your sits bones rooted down to the floor or chair underneath you. Feeling fully present in your body. And we're going to take a grounding breath. And we're going to inhale through the nose from the belly. Inhale here. Exhale through the mouth. Now bring into your mind's eye your intention for this new moon. It can be a word, it can be a vision you have, and really allow yourself to think big, because this is Sagittarius. It's ruled by Jupiter. It thinks big. If I told you that this was inevitable, that this is so possible within the realm of your future, what would you think up? What would you wish for? What would you dream up? And as you're envisioning, as you make space for any signs and synchronicities that come up, any words, just feel into your body what it feels like as if it's happening right this moment. If you're having a hard time visualizing, it's okay. You can just say words. Okay. Now, when you're ready, you can flutter your eyes open, come back to the space. And I invite you to write that down on a piece of paper and then burn it later on after you watch this, or burn it right now as an offering to the spirit of the fire, to Jupiter, and surrender to the universe and take inspired action daily.
Thank you, Laura. Oh, I felt that. I felt that.
Yeah. I'll just share really quickly, since it is such an auspicious time and Jupiter is going forward, what I envisioned for the witching hour is to destigmatize the word and the beingness of being a witch, a powerful co-creator of your own reality, somebody who has agency and who has authority in the spaces that they take and hold, and also their voice, being able to communicate their truth and show up in their authentic way, and also just really help people to live in a spiritual way that maybe they didn't feel comfortable, or they have to hide that part of themselves, using astrology and magic in their everyday lives.
Oh my gosh. That is so hard to follow up. That was beautiful. Um, so should we dive into what is the witch? Who is the witch? What does witch mean?
Mm-hmm. So I actually asked Stephanie a while ago what the word witch meant for her, because I had been asking people, what does the word witch mean to you? Because some people I found had a hard time even acknowledging that part of themselves, or even saying the word out loud. And I thought to myself, wow, there is some like electrical charge there of maybe past lives, of being somebody who was literally burnt at the stake, or some like dark connotation that that word holds for people. And so I started doing some research around witches and witch hunts. And I also happened to visit Salem, Massachusetts last year. And I stumbled upon Silvia Federici's book. She's an Italian activist who, her book, Caliban and the Witch, really piqued my interest, because she speaks about the witches and witch hunts starting in medieval times in Europe, where people were serfs. And if you don't know what that means, it's just you basically have to work the land for your the lord of the land, who you like literally are kind of a slave, because you have debt against the land. And so in order to pay back your debts, you have to work the land, and you're under a contract for X amount of years. So these serfs, after a certain amount of time, would be free of their debt and get to make their own way of living, like entrepreneurship. And the ones who were impacted the most were women and the marginalized groups and the elderly, where they would be like, I guess in our modern times, like herbalists and healers. And that was a threat to the state, and that was the threat to capitalism, because at the time, the Black Plague was very rampant in the late 1300s to 1400s. And I actually tried to look up the astrological chart for that time, and I couldn't find the exact one, but there was another Saturn and Jupiter conjunction during the Black Plague, which we
Ooh,
had at the onslaught of COVID, which I
yeah.
thought was interesting. And so the Black Plague wiped out like half of the European population. And so in order for them to make money from the land, because it was an agricultural society, they needed to have bodily control over women so that they would keep producing children, so that they would have workers for the land. And so that kind of was the onslaught of these witch hunts. I honestly don't know if it could have been that a lot of them were practicing their indigenous witchcraft, right? Like using herbs to heal and talking to the plants, because plants have a spirit. Or like two things could have been happening at the same time, where they were just accusing women of being witches because, again, they were a threat to the state. And so I find that interesting for our modern times, because of what's happening in the cultural zeitgeist. Similar things are happening now, or maybe they just never ended.
Mhm.
So I think a lot of us have that witch wound, where we have had some past lives. Well, I know that for a fact, because so many of us now coming out as healers, astrologers, and herbalists, and people who practice in magic, there's like this imposter syndrome, but also this fear of showing up, because
Yeah.
be hunted.
Yes. Yes. I love, I mean, that term witch wound. Like that's such a beautiful way to sum it up, because it does feel like a past life connection. And um there is that fear of taking up space, of claiming this title, imposter syndrome, of speaking your truth, of um automatically, putting yourself on the fringes of society by claiming the identity of a witch, right? So yeah, it's definitely something that's been pervasive throughout history. And then there was the Catholic Church and the Pope that also really expedited the process. I did some research earlier, in 1485 there was some guy named Henrik Kramer who wrote a book called I think Hammer of Witches, and was just like really I don't know what his issue was, but for whatever reason, like he wrote a full book about it and went to the Pope and was like, we've got to do something about this. And that was the basis that really kickstarted a lot of the witch hunts and the trials. And they would blame witches for spoiled harvests, miscarriages, sick livestock. And usually the accusers, the people who were accusing the witches, there was some type of class difference.
Yes.
So it's just a pervasive issue that has been going on forever.
Yes, and thank you for bringing up the Christian Catholic part of it, because that is why this has always been about spirituality, even today, because when they came to the United States, or back then it was just, indigenous lands, they used that as a way to, like, as a, I guess, reason to colonize the indigenous peoples, as we say this the day before Indigenous Remembrance Day, formerly known as Thanksgiving, because they thought that they were, devil worshippers, and they were, savages. And so they had to come here and take their lands and save them. I'd say that in air quotes. So they used that as a way to basically perform genocide.
Yes. Yeah. And I think something else that's also really important to bring up regarding the witch hunts and witches in general, if you think of the witch hunts, especially in the United States, it evokes this image of a witch burning at the stake. And oftentimes, you pick the picture that comes in your head is like a white woman burning at the stake. But as we've come to know, history has not been reported accurately. And it was racism was absolutely baked into there. And it was a way, an excuse to target marginalized communities. And a lot of that pain was just not accurately recorded. So,
And even when I went to the Salem witch trials, it began because two of the young girls were sick. And again, this was like 1600s United States, like just when the settlers started coming here. And instead of thinking that they were just sick because they didn't have like indoor plumbing and like hygiene, they were like, it must be witchcraft. And they had this serf, this woman Tituba, who was from Barbados, who her indigenous spiritual practice was, I think, hoodoo. And so she did work with herbs, and she was into her spiritual practice, and then accused her of teaching the two young girls her like witchcraft. And it was all just based on fear, and because people were dying because of a disease. Again, a disease is like all baked into this too, like that fear of people dying and stuff. So even the witchcrafts in Europe, the witch hunts and accusing people of witchcraft, came from Europe to here. And now, modern day, now 2022, I find that there is still this resistance in a lot of my friends who practice magic, who are into herbs and potions and spells, that it's hard for them to even say, this is who I am. So, how do you relate to the term witch?
It's so interesting because this is the first year that I actually changed like my title, my email signature, my Instagram bio to say witch. And there totally is a stigma about it. Earlier this year, I had a very fortunate opportunity of being on television, and I wanted my title card to say, astrologer and witch. And they were like, oh, no, 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 no. Like, we cannot do that. Maybe modern mystic. We'll give that a try. But it was definitely this like uncomfortable, they're like, our audience will not be able to stomach that, the term witch. So there's still so much stigma around it. But and I was hesitant after that experience. I was like, oh, well, if I still want this, other bookings in the future, I better not call myself a witch. But it just didn't feel aligned, because I literally am a witch. So yeah, it feels full circle, and I feel more empowered and grateful and excited to be using that title and that term. And I feel more in alignment, like living a truth. Yeah. And when you first asked me about like, how do I relate to the word witch, or, what does it mean to me to be a witch? I think I said, like, I just want to help people heal, right? Like, because these tools have helped me so much in my personal growth, transformation, like overcoming trauma, like, and so to be able to share that with others is something that really matters to me. But I've been like reflecting ever since then, because you had such an eloquent answer. I was like,
Did
oh
I?
my gosh, you did. Oh, you always do. Come on. So yeah, I was like, okay, I need to think more about this. Um, and yeah, I think I know it goes back to my childhood, and like I was doing spells as a little kid, really manifesting and fully believing in my magic and power. That was something that I used to sell my autograph to my family, and I was like, you're going to want to hang on to this, like but just really, I had that confidence, that belief, that knowing that comes with being a witch. And um, I grew up with a sister who's disabled. And I told my mom, I was like, I want to be famous so I can help people like her. Like, I remember being little, and that was what I wanted to do. And that was my goal. And I just knew it, and I felt it in my body. And that's pretty witchy.
It's very
But
true.
what about you?
So, I never resonated with the word witch because, like you said, it had this image in my mind of the Wicked Witch of, what was it, the East or the West in The Wizard of Oz?
Oh boy.
I don't remember which one it was, but like the green face, the ugly
Yeah.
eyes, the warts, and just being nasty.
Mhm.
Um, so I never resonated with the witch until I think it was when I read that book, when I started reading the Sylvia Federici book and realizing that being a witch is inherently anti-capitalist, anti-establishment, anti-patriarchy, or resisting the patriarchy. And then when I started diving deeper into my own indigenous spiritual practices, in my culture they're called mudangs, which are shamans, but they're women.
Mm,
I found so fascinating. And they
mm,
were all killed, throughout history, and even to this day they're stigmatized as these like people who worship like evil deities, when really, when you look into what they're doing, they're like animists. They believe that everything has a spirit. They use music and dancing as a way to conjure up some deities and give offerings to spirits. And so even like when I told my mom that I wanted to learn about the mudang, she was like, no, you What happened to Jesus?
Uh-huh.
It's like, I'm down with Jesus, but I want to learn my indigenous spiritual roots. So I think the more I learn and unlearn, I'm comfortable saying the word witch because there's so much power there. And because there is a little electrical charge and the rebellious part of me is like, I want that.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, that just so many chills and such a similar experience with my family, my mom's family in particular, who's from Mexico. And I've been studying curanderismo, and my mom is like, oh, I'm like, Mom, I can talk to dead people now. She's like, oh, there's this like fear around it, and it was something that my grandma used to talk to me about, but it was always like, shh, hush, hush, like, so it's so interesting when I mean, grew up with our moms, right? So like to have to the work that comes with it of unlearning, I just think is and to reclaim your culture and these practices is really healing and powerful. So
healing. And she's coming around because we do these rituals with her like every month. I don't know if you have specific rituals you do around like the first of the month. My sister learned this on TikTok where she blows cinnamon into the front door. And so we've been doing it once a month. And all of a sudden, my mom got this like fat check that she wasn't expecting. And now she's like, okay, I'm a witch too.
oh my God. Oh my God. I love it. I love it.
Only if it pays.
Yes. Yes. Those are the receipts. What can um, should we talk some transits?
Yes, 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 yes. And we're obviously going to unpack the witch and all the archetypes that it comes with throughout this show because it's so important to us and reclaiming that word and that identity. But let's talk the transits. Do you have any that you want to speak about specifically?
Yeah. So we thought it would be fun, just like as a way to learn astrology. One of the like tools that I've used to learn astrology and lore too, that like really sped up, I think, both of our knowledge is journaling along the stars. So like writing the transits down and going back and seeing like, how did this energy actually play out? Because it's so much to read or to know like, oh, Venus is going to be having a conversation with Mars today, or Neptune is square Jupiter, or whatever it is, but like, what does that mean? And what are some examples of how this could show up in your life? So, every week we'll just be sharing what we learned, as these archetypes and these energies manifest in our daily life. So, mine was from last week. The sun was still in Scorpio and it was forming a sextile with Pluto in Capricorn. So I'm a Leo rising. That means the sun was in my fourth house. The fourth house is foundations, your roots, your psychological foundation, family, ancestry. And then Pluto has been hanging out in my sixth house, which is like habits, routine, how you do stuff, And for me, I realized that I am neurodivergent and I have ADD. And it was like such a powerful moment, which Pluto is all about power and empowerment. And to have these two pieces of my chart activated, where it's like my psychological foundation and like mysterious Scorpio, the depths of my psyche, and Pluto and Capricorn, which is like, let's change the way that you look at your psyche and you understand like how you move through the world and why you do the things you do. It was just so powerful. And it was like a really cool example of astrology coming to life.
And you really helped shape my understanding of the fourth house because you say the fourth house is like one of the most important places really for everything.
Yeah. I mean, and it's also like our past. Like I found like the second that the sun went into Scorpio, I was like so nostalgic. I'm like, what's going on? I was like flipping through my yearbooks. I'm like, why am I doing this? But yeah, there's so much depth there, obviously. But
Mhm.
what about you? How have the planets been playing out for you?
So I have two examples. One of them is mine, and one of them is me, but like helping other people.
Mhm.
So there is a fixed star. I've told you about this, Steph, a sheet or shiat, and
Yeah.
it's at 29 degrees of Pisces. And right now, Jupiter is at 28, and it's going to go back over sheet. I'm just going to say sheet.
Yeah.
And but I have my IC at 29 degrees of Pisces and my sun at 00 Aries. And anytime I've had an astrologer look at that, they're always like, because the fixed stars are like super intense, and they're always like, oh, that is a signifier of beheading, of flooding, of just like horrible things. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do with that?
Right. Not
But
helpful.
not helpful. But this week I heard this astrologer, and I'm gonna forget her name, but she said that it actually means freedom from bondage.
Mm.
And I like that one astrologer saying that changed everything for me. And that's why it's important to listen to different people, because
Absolutely.
everybody has different nuggets of wisdom. And like that one thing was such like the Jupiterian, because Jupiter and Pisces for me is more internal expansion, it's more of enlightenment inward. And
Mm.
that was just like, oh,
Mm.
from bondage. I love that.
That's beautiful.
So that was number one. And then I realized I have a gift with helping people sell their homes. And it makes sense because I have the ruler of my 10th in my fourth. And again, you
Oh,
said the fourth house is like home
yeah.
and its roots. But because the 10th house is, your career, and my 10th house is Virgo, but my Mercury is in my fourth house. And I've helped three people successfully sell their homes in this economy using astrology.
OMG, do tell. Spill.
More than the asking price.
Who
So
are you?
I know.
Put that
I
on your
know.
website.
So I was like, I think I need to like practice more with people because I only have three case studies. But I was and the last one was my sister. She just sold her place and she got this fat check. And I was like, I think I have a gift. And so with my friend, she also has a Sagittarius rising. And so when Jupiter was in Pisces, I said, put your house on the market like immediately. And it sold a week later, like 100 grand above the asking price.
Oh my God.
So that was one. That was really easy because she had
Yeah.
Jupiter going into her fourth house. My sister is a Capricorn rising. So
Mm.
Aries was in her fourth house. And so when Aries first went into Jupiter first went into Aries, I was like, put your house on the market. But then I said it's going to take a while because it's going to go retrograde. And it
Mm.
took exactly 4 months during the retrograde period. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
She just closed on Monday. And then my other friend, because she didn't have like that kind of transit, I used an electional chart. And
Yes.
I think they're in contract right now.
OMG. Okay. See, limitless potential here in the witching hour. You can there's just so much you can do with magic. Okay. We're going to need some testimonials. We're going to need to add a link to your website. That is amazing. I love that.
It's
Uh,
magic.
It's magic.
Mhm.
Um, I also just thought of some current events that aligned with the transit this week. I know we're going to talk about Elon and Twitter next, but remember a couple days ago, Mercury and Venus were at the same spot in the sky, which is kind of rare. That doesn't happen all the time. Um, and on that day, I remember seeing two headlines in particular that stuck out to me. So Mercury is like the voice, singing,
Mhm.
communication, expression, and Venus is like art, beauty, and yeah, our creative side, right? So I saw some headline that said Miley Cyrus showed up at a concert as Hannah Montana. And I was like, okay,
No
that's peak
way.
She's a Sag too. She just
Yeah.
had her little Saggy birthday. So
Yeah.
I was like, that is so astrology coming to life. And then I saw another headline the same day that Madonna's daughter came out with an album.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, astrology is literally everywhere. And yeah, it's just fascinating.
It's very fascinating. Do you want to show the charts for Elon and Twitter?
Yes, let's do it. Brace yourself, everyone. Here we
I,
go.
by the way, I'm so excited to talk about this because I've been tracking this for so long.
Uh-huh.
Like I'm so glad that I like finally get to talk about it with you.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. Um, I do just want to say a disclaimer that Elon's chart um, is a Rodin rating X. So for anyone who's never heard of the Rodin ratings, I'm assuming some dude with the name Rodin came up with this rating system for astrological birth times to confirm how accurate the specific time is. When you have the rating of an X, it's not confirmed by kin or legal documents. So we're not actually sure if Elon is a Gemini rising, but it kind of checks out. And even if he's not a Gemini rising, he has Saturn and Venus in Gemini, and that is getting activated. Oh my goodness, by Mars retrograde in Gemini. So Laura, please take it away.
Yeah. So first of all, you've seen Elon's chart more than I have. I've been focusing a lot on the Twitter aspect because the first thing I noticed when I looked at this is the chart of Twitter's first tweet, was that Twitter is going through its Mars retrograde, Mars return in retrograde. And this full moon in Gemini is going to be exact at 16 degrees, conjunct the moon. And I know, and I was like,
oh my God. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah. And I have been seeing a lot of opinions on TikTok and Twitter actually. I just joined Twitter, reactivated my Twitter this year, and who knows what's going to happen. But at first, there were a lot of people saying, oh, Elon is dumb. He doesn't know how to manage people, which I don't know if he does anyway, but basically he bought this thinking that he can make more money out of Twitter and kind of didn't know what to do and just started firing people, and the ultimate collapse and demise of Twitter. But then I saw other opinions that I kind of agree with more, which is that Elon, who is one of the richest men in the world, bought Twitter to specifically kill it on purpose, as a form of censorship. And so when I look at that 16 Mars in Gemini, that's retrograde with the moon, I don't know, something's going to happen that day, I think.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah.
It's also opposing the moon at 19 Sag.
It's a T square. So when I looked at this first tweet chart, I thought, OMG, no wonder being on Twitter makes me want to vomit. Like I get so anxious on Twitter. I've maybe sent like one tweet about like Cheez-Its and like that's it. I just can't be on there. I'm so nervous about it. And I looked at this chart and I was like,
no wonder.
Oh my gosh, it's Mars is opposite the moon, but then those two placements are for, and Mars is conflict, frustration, anger. The moon is like our safety. And they're forming squares, which are harsh aspects with this Mercury-Uranus conjunction, which is like unpredictable conversations and opinions and thoughts. So yeah, when you have T squares in astrology, it creates this point of like, it's got to burst out. So it's got to burst out in this Virgo way, which is like a tweet, literally, right? Like typing it out. But my Venus in my chart sits right there. So I just, yeah, when you sent me this chart, I was like, I felt affirmed. Like I was like, no wonder I'm not a tweeter. Like, but the two charts together, Elon and this Twitter chart, I mean, they're both being incredibly activated. And I was taking a look at kind of like what has Mars retrograde been doing to Elon's chart. That full moon that you're talking about is going to take place on his Venus. And according to this chart, Venus is ruling his 12th, which can, expose secrets, enemies. The fifth house is risks. The sun just moved into my fifth house along with Mercury and Venus, and I've just been feeling so risky. So I don't know. I mean, that full moon is definitely going to impact both of these charts. And Mars retrograde already formed a square with his moon in Virgo. And in this chart, the moon rules his second house of income. So if you look at that, it's like he just shelled out a ton of fucking money, right? Like, and when Mars stations direct on January 12th, it's going to station direct at 8 degrees. So it's going to be within an orb of resquaring that moon. So I would just be curious to see if there's any other financial stuff that comes up around this deal.
Mm-hmm. And actually, I just saw something today that he lost his net worth, like went down $100 billion today, because of Tesla and how it's like not doing good. I don't know. I don't own Tesla, so I don't know like what the problem is there. But yeah, something is definitely being activated here for sure.
And it's going to be a larger story for both Elon and Twitter in 2023 because we're going to see the nodes shifting into Aries and Libra. And in Elon's chart, this axis represents his midheaven, his reputation, his career, his legacy. And in Twitter's charts, that's a nodal return for the first tweet. The North Node is in Aries. The Sun is in Aries. The midheaven is also in Aries. So pay attention to April 20th of next year. That is our first Aries solar eclipse. And that is going to be a seeding of like this longer, fated, hectic, dramatic, unpredictable events that unfold for both of, for this story.
Yeah, I love it. When Pluto goes into Aquarius in March, do you feel like, so I feel like it is going to be a death, rebirth, transformation in tech because it's happening now. Do you believe that as well?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Major rehaul. Yeah. And also like corruption and power and greed and like the dark side of tech and misinformation. And I was thinking about how when Neptune was in Aquarius was when, I don't know if you had a blogging phase, but I was like really into Blogger. And that's when like blogging started to pick up, Netflix started to pick up, Instagram's lame ass old, when it first launched, like that started to kick off and, Facebook, etc. So yeah, the Pluto comes along and it's there to reveal the dark side of it, but also eventually it's a long transit. It's going to be like 20 years or something like that. Eventually there will be a rebirthing and a transformation. But I think in the beginning, especially the first couple passes that we're experiencing in March, it's going to, reveal some intensity around tech and social media and the internet.
Because it begs the question, these are social apps. Like Twitter is predicated on the ability to communicate information very quickly in a short amount of time, right? A tweet is very Gemini. And the question here is, should social media even be privatized? That's what I think is the Pluto is going to like dismantle that, because when you privatize something, you have shareholders that you need to make money for, that you need to grow. And I think with the tech industry, because it kind of started in the 80s, right? Like I think, I forget the chart of the World Wide Web, but I think it's as old as me. So it has to go through some kind of restructuring or like checks and balances because it's grown so quickly in such a short amount of time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So this is kind of like the Elon and Twitter saga is like a preview, to a larger overarching topic, and that will carry on for the next couple of decades.
Mm-hmm. What did you want to say about his Chiron return?
So he's going through his Chiron return. He was born according to this chart with Chiron on the midheaven. And I've noticed through journaling and such that when we have strong Chiron activations, and even just from like paying attention to like celebrities charts and people who are in the headlines, when we have strong Chiron activations, it can mean we're in the news, or we're getting more publicity, or people are paying attention to us. And Chiron is the wounded healer, so it kind of seems like, what? That's so strange. But it's like, I think Chiron is very, very fated. So it can manifest in a lot of ways. It doesn't have to just mean that like you're reliving your childhood trauma or in some way. It can, it's the appearance and activation of Chiron can manifest as like yeah, that a healing of that energy in some way, or overcoming it, but in Elon's case, I mean, his reputation is being wounded, and I think that's like kind of a literal manifestation.
Yeah, because when I look at Elon's chart, and if I didn't know him at all, if I just looked at his chart, I would say, wow, this person has so much potential to be this like giver of like this master communicator who can give so much to the collective, North Node in Aquarius,
Mm.
and use his own resources with because he's a Cancer,
Mm-hmm.
Sun, Mercury in Cancer, like somebody who can really communicate his feelings from a place of like real value and worth. Maybe that's the problem, is that maybe he has a little insecurity. I don't know. I don't know him. But then, like, again, we don't know him, but anytime I think of billionaires, I'm like, do you really need that much money?
Right. Right. Like, why?
Why?
Why? Yeah. You could have a magical, abundant life and solve a bunch of world issues,
Mhm.
or move in the right direction, move the needle in the right direction.
And it is so interesting that he has his Uranus conjunct his IC, because he has like 1,000 children
Ugh,
in the
ugh.
fifth house.
It just, ugh. Oh my gosh, we talked about this. He disgusts me. Spoiler alert. Um, and his father, I know he's a different person, but his father like married his stepdaughter, which I think is just
Oh, wait, I didn't
um
know that.
yeah, yeah. It's disgusting. So yeah. Um that family. It's interesting. I mean, he also has a T square with his moon. It's forming a square with Neptune and Saturn. So
Yeah.
um that can be quite a challenging aspect. But yeah, we don't know him. But what I can tell you is that there are some major dates for us to pay attention to with the Mars retrograde story and with this saga. Um, I think November 28th, that is going to be the next time that Mars retrograde meets his Venus exactly. So that is a date for us to pay attention to. The first pass of that transit was on September 28th, and that is when he originally had a deposition scheduled, but it got pushed back retrograde.
Mhm.
Um, so that is going to be an interesting time. And then January 12th, I think that stationing direct, forming a square to that moon, um, will be really interesting, like you mentioned, to pay attention to what in the world is happening to his finances. How is this acquisition um, affected his overall sense of stability.
Mhm. Mhm. And also the Mercury retrograde is going to be opposing his natal Mercury.
Oh, what a doozy.
Yeah.
Mm.
Because eighth house is other people's money. Other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And
And like,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just thought like karmic contracts and debts and like,
Mhm.
um, mm-hmm.
Yeah. And why is this important? Because this is like this could be foreshadowing for what's to come. You know, any billionaire can just buy TikTok or Instagram. Well, they're already owned by billionaires and just like completely destroy them. And it's like, how do we then disseminate information and how do we learn things? Like, that's why I say, like, should social media be privatized? I think it should be free. I think we should be able to communicate with each other. And it almost seems like they don't want us to know something.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff they don't want us to know. But yeah, exactly. So this is definitely something I'm sure will continue to, especially as these transits play out. Um, Laura and I are so excited to talk about March next year because there are 3 life-changing transits happening. Two of them haven't happened in a really long time. So this is just kind of our preview of Elon and Twitter, but I'm sure we'll be revisiting this topic.
Do you want to really quickly talk about like what you're excited about for the rest of 2022?
Ooh, ooh.
If you are at all.
Well, it's so funny because I just what just came to my mind was like, oh, I'm really excited for when Mercury forms a trine to Jupiter. And I'm like, shit, that already happened. And then I'm like, oh, I'm really excited for the new moon in Sagittarius. Shit, that's right now. Um, I feel like those, I mean, not to, be kind of like a cosmic Debbie Downer, but those were like the 2 real standout highlight finishing moments of 2022 for me. Um, we're going to end the year on a Mercury retrograde, which it's not the end of the world. Calm down. I know it gets a bad rap in, the media, but we talked about this. Like I'm into Mercury retrograde now. I like it. It helps me slow down, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
It's kind of against capitalism. And
Mhm.
if you think about it, like it encourages the rest and recharging in that cycle. But I don't know. What about you? Please have a better answer.
Yeah. Do you mind stopping the share?
Yeah.
Um, no, I also was like this new moon Sagittarius. I've been waiting for this new moon since the new moon in Leo. So this
Uh-huh.
August. I was like, I can't wait till November. Because Jupiter is my chart ruler. So whenever Jupiter is retrograde, I feel like
Yes.
something is not happening, but it's good. It's good to have those retrogrades. The next one that I'm super excited about is actually December 20th when Jupiter enters Aries because it'll be conjunct my sun and it'll be trine to my ascendant. So I'm like, yay!
Oh, hello, hello.
No.
Please report back.
Oh my gosh. When Jupiter was in Aries earlier this year, I literally felt like I was on top of the world. It's like give fire to a fire sign, a double fire sign, and I feel like unstoppable. And
Well,
then
you
went back into my 4th house. I was like, I just like cried for 4 months straight.
well, that checks out. That checks out astrologically. And you have that critical degree of 0 degrees Aries. So, Jupiter makes things bigger. It's a planet of expansion. Fire signs we're known for our energy and our enthusiasm. My husband has an early degree Mars in Aries, and
Mhm.
literally the second Jupiter entered Aries, we were on our honeymoon, and he went from being like the quietest little pea. We had just had a massage. It was very mellow to we're driving down a beautiful road. And all of a sudden he starts like drumming on stuff, singing, moving. We're like in a car, like on a road trip. I'm like, what happened to you? I pulled up my chart. Jupiter entered Aries. I was like
Yeah.
activating that Martian.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And with
Yeah.
Mars, obviously with his like it's very instinctual.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's fun for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a fire Mars too, so it works out.
Oh, you do? I've Mars in Libra. I have a detriment Mars,
You
which
know what?
yeah.
Detriment planets,
Mhm.
we should talk about this.
We should talk about this.
Very powerful. We just have to work up to it.
I have also a detriment Mercury, so I definitely agree. It just works in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Mhm. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about before we go to the Q&A?
No, I think just it's important to highlight that this new moon, we told you how beautiful it is. So, like, set your intentions. This is a really, really not all full moon and new moons are created equal. And this one in particular is really beautiful. So, manifest your heart out. And the fact that the ruling planet of this new moon moved directions and started moving forward again, like seconds after the new moon took place, like that doesn't happen. That's not just like a normal thing that happens in astrology. So it's extra special. So make the most of it. And thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for being here. Yay!
Yay.